Hey, what's up guys, Sir Emanon here, and welcome to episode number 7 of Cheap Competitive Contenders, the series where I take a budget deck list of under $100 and try and pit it up against the metagame. So this episode is going to be featuring Megalith, which did win the community tab poll as you guys can see, and it's a very interesting archetype for sure because it received quite a lot of hype and attention in last format because it got one LCS top, as well as a couple of other notable high placing finishes. But with the banning of Block Dragon on the last ban list, the deck kind of died down quite a bit, and people kind of wrote off the deck as a lot less powerful. And while it's true that Block Dragon added, the insane capabilities that it did to like add Emancipator and such, by no means is the deck dead, and I think people shouldn't be counting the deck out quite yet. The engine in and of itself is very, very consistent, it's quite recursive, and it still has the ability to produce some of the best boss monsters in the entire game, that being, Magician of Black Chaos Max, which in and of itself can just be a game ender. And you have cards like Bethor, which can clean up very simplified game states and just absolutely dominate control matchups. So while I think the deck definitely did get weaker with the banning of Black Dragon, by no means is the deck unplayable. And I think if you're especially looking to play on a budget, as is the idea behind the series, this is one of the best decks that you can actually buy, just in terms of sheer value. So I'm going to put on the screen for you guys right now the price breakdown for the individual cards. And if you guys want to see more details and interact with some API calculators, I'll have the Google spreadsheet down in the description box below, so be sure to check that out if you're interested. But yeah, you can see the Megalith cards themselves are very, very cheap. They're literally pennies. And you can honestly buy the entire Megalith core plus the incantations for around $20 to $25, which is, for one, insane value, just given how powerful the deck is. But also, it gives you a lot of freedom for staple cards and non-engine cards and just things that you want to supplement the strategy with. So it gives you a lot of leeway for things you already own, or if you want to just invest a little bit more into powerful staple cards, then that is definitely the avenue to do so. As per usual, if you guys are interested in purchasing any of these cards in this deck list today, feel free to use my TCG Player affiliate link in the description box down below. If you want to help support the channel at no additional cost to you, every little bit counts and goes in to help the channel. So I would be very much appreciative if you were interested in doing that. But carrying on here, we're going to go ahead and run through the deck list card by card and sort of just talk about the overarching strategy. So I will preface this as well by saying that I am not by any means a seasoned Megalith player. I did in fact actually kind of learn the combos as I was preparing for the video, and I learned a lot of the basic strategies and what the deck itself tries to do. So I'm not going to pretend like I am the most well-known or most experienced or most seasoned Megalith player out there, but I can definitely give you guys a good rundown of what you can expect in a good majority of your games, provided that you are sticking to the game plan, as some would say. But if you guys aren't familiar with what the Megalith cards do, which I imagine there's quite a few of you who might not be like super familiar, the best way to think about them, in my opinion, is to look at the monsters in classes. So another archetype that's good to think of it in that respect is something like Infernoid, where you have classes of Infernoids based on their levels. It's kind of similar with Megalith here. So you have the level 8s, which allow you to discard them themselves from hand in order to ritual summon a Megalith ritual monster from your hand through conventional and normal ritual summoning mechanisms. Then you have the level 4s, which all gain an effect on ritual summon, and also have ignition effects on the field that allow you to ritual summon any ritual monster, not just Megaliths, from your hand as well. And then finally you have Fool, which is in the class by itself. So if you can think of the Megaliths in that sort of respect, then you can kind of break them down further into their individual effects, which makes them a lot easier to digest. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get into the deck profile here. So first off, we have 3 copies of Nibiru, which is honestly the flex spot in the deck. It's there just because it's thematic. It can be searched technically via Gallant Granite, although you're rarely doing it that way. But it's a high impact hand trap. It's good in the format, and even though it's not going to be by itself enough to stop combo most of the time, it still is possibly your best chance if you could pick just one single hand trap. You can opt to play stuff like Ash or just other more consistency cards if you wish to, but this spot is pretty much entirely up to you if you want to play something different. But this is one of the rare instances where I can play Nibiru in the budget, so I will take advantage of that. And it is worth noting this is getting a reprint in maximum gold, which is nice, but that'll also shift some of the prices for future episodes of this series, which I'm looking forward to very much. Next up is 3 copies of Manju. Honestly, if you really wanted to cut down on costs, this card is a couple bucks right now. You could just play Senju instead, because there's literally one ritual spell in the entire deck. So the drawback of Senju not being able to search spells is largely not relevant. Although it can come up, so that's why I'm still opting to play Manju. It's just the better card and the superior card overall. But it is just a generic normal summon searcher, not too much to say here. Then we have our incantation engine, which is 1 Talismandra, 1 Candle, 2 Pentaplume, and 3 copies of Chalice Slime. So Chalice Slime is obviously the best one because what it allows you to do is summon your Candle from deck to be able to access your Inception. And Inception is the primary way of you being able to access your Megaliths from the beginning, because they do all have effects to somehow get Megaliths or just rituals in general onto the board, but it's kind of hard to get that ball rolling. So this is one of the best ways you can actually do that, just by a 1-card mechanism. So Candle is, in that regard, sort of a bit of a brick, but it's not the end of the world if you do draw it, as long as you have other ways of kind of just accessing your engine. But it's definitely not the one that you want to draw. You don't want to really be drawing an abundance of incantations, because you want your hand to be primarily composed of Megaliths and just ways to cycle through your engine that way. So you don't really need to play a high concentration of these, and I found this ratio to just be fine in testing. Also, Pentaplume is one of the better ones to just have remaining in your deck for access to, via either Chalice Slime or later with Inception's Graveyard effect, because Recursion is really, really nice. You do have Recursion in cards like Portal as well as Full, but it's nice to just have additional ways to access other cards, or additional cards that you might not have access to otherwise. So I feel like this is all the imputations you really need. You don't need to play a high abundance of them. The one you want to see is Chalice Slime, but the other ones, you prefer to stay in deck the majority of the time. Next up, you have the level 4s, as I mentioned briefly before. You have the ability to gain additional effects on Ritual Summon, and these are the basic advantage generating Megaliths. So if Ophiel is summoned, you get to add a Megalith monster, and if Haggith is summoned, you get to add a Megalith spell or trap. And notably, these effects are not once per turn. So one of the cool things you can do is you can use Ophiel's on-field ignition effect to cycle into Haggith, Haggith search, and then you can Haggith back into another Ophiel, get another Ophiel search. Things like that. You can very, very well run through a lot of your deck very, very quickly, and fueling your graveyard is also nice to be able to make sure that Bethor gets as many pops as it can. So that's one of the cool things about it. And these are really nice because Candle happens to be level 4, and these are also level 4, so it just works very, very, very well together. And these are primarily the ways that you are getting access to plays during your own turn. Now, notably, Megalith Oak is weaker in terms of its on-summon effect. It just draws a card and discards one, but you have the added benefit of it being able to ritual summon during either player's main phase. So that's cool because, as I mentioned previously, the level 4 Megaliths do not ritual summon just Megaliths themselves. They can summon any ritual monster. So this is how you can get access to your Chaos Max on your opponent's turn and basically lock them out of monster effects. So that is the reason why we only play one of it. It's not really a starter in its own right, but it is able to produce one of the most broken plays in the entire game right now. Next up, we have the level 8s. We have Eritron, we have Bethor, and we have Phaleg. So as I mentioned, these discard themselves from hand to be able to ritual summon a Megalith ritual monster from your hand. And Eritron is the one that's a quick effect in this case. You'll notice that Ophiel, Haggith are not quick effects, whereas Oak is. And then in this case, Bethor and Phaleg are not quick effects, whereas Eritron is. So you can kind of see there are patterns here. But Eritron's other effect while on the field is that it bestows targeting protection. You can negate and destroy anything that targets any card on your field by placing a ritual monster from your grave back to the bottom of your deck. So that can include, obviously things like Imperm, things like Valor, but it also works on your other cards if you happen to play other engines if you want to. It can also protect things like your Manju, your incantations, etc., etc. So it's a very, very nice protection piece. Primarily, it can be used as a hand trap on your opponent's first turn if you happen to open it with Bethor and other cards. Granted, that play is generally pretty minus because when they discard themselves for cost, you still have to have other monsters that are that add up to the levels of whatever you're trying to ritual summon, right? So with the level 4s, I didn't mention this, but they specify that they include themselves on the field as part of the ritual requirement. Whereas these, of course, obviously if you're sending them to grave as cost, then you can't use them as, the ritual tribute fodder. So because of this, they are a bit costly to use, but in some cases it can help you get out of a tight spot. Like for example, if Candle gets negated or you don't open any access to Unformed, these can get you out of tricky situations by getting more access to just putting the level 4s on field. And those can make up for the advantage that you lose. Bethor is the primary disruptor in the Megalith engine. So what it does is that when it is ritual summoned, you get to target cards your opponent controls up to the number of ritual monsters with different names in your graveyard and destroy them. So we're playing 9 different ritual names here, so you can destroy anywhere from 1 to 9 cards, which is absolutely insane. And this is an absolute blowout against backer decks. It's really good in comboing with Chaos Max because you just get to pick apart the lingering board state that they have and it is your primary disruption tool. Finally, we have Phaleg, which admittedly is not the most impressive one, but it does bestow all of your monsters an attack boost based on the number of rituals in your grave, so it can get very, very big quite quickly. And you'll notice a lot of the other Megaliths have high defense but lower attack values. So this is how you get access to OTKing in the absence of things like Fiber and Link Cross. And you'll notice I'm not playing like Researcher plus the Needle Fiber stuff because, one, for budgeting, but also I figured, if you guys want to see a deck that doesn't take advantage of Needle Fiber, this is one of the ways that you can actually play a more quote-unquote pure version of Megalith, so to speak. Although, to be honest, Megalith in and of itself is already pretty pure, but I digress. Moving on to Full, this is the only level 2 of the deck, but this card is probably one of the best extenders of the entire deck. So it can be ritual summoned via, Unformed or just one of the level 4s and one of the level 8s. And if it is ritual summoned, you get to revive back any ritual monster in your graveyard, and this card's level modulates to become that same level of whatever you add back, and then you just add it back to your hand. So this card is really good at being able to manage the way that you want to summon things like Bethor or Chaos Max, because if you add high level things, then you can use it as part of the tribute requirement. But also has a broken effect that during either player's main phase, you can activate its effect to ritual summon any Megalith from your hand or deck just by conventional ritual summoning methods. So because it's a quick effect and it summons from deck, this is how you can primarily get access to Bethor without having to draw it. So it's really nice you don't have to actually search it out. So Full is the card that you want access to in the vast majority of your games. It's probably the best monster in the entire deck, and it's the card that you really want to ensure that you have your advantage going and just your engine progressing throughout each turn. Then finally we have Chaos Max, which is pretty much the Azathoth, right? So when it's summoned, you get to tribute any monster, and then it locks your opponent out of monster effects, and that is pretty much that. Then you have Inception, which is good with the Incantation engine, of course. You have 3 copies of Extra Foolish Burial, which is essentially a Rhoda by setting Herald, but you can also send Elder Entity Entis, and then just be able to get value going second, so it's really nice. It can be a removal spell in a pinch. 3 Preparation, 3 Unformed, which can ritual summon a Megalith from your deck in defense by tributing monsters whose levels equal twice whatever you're trying to summon. So for example, if you're trying to summon Full, then you basically have to tribute levels equaling 4 exactly. This also can notably reduce your opponent's monster's attack for each ritual on field, which can be useful in outing a card like Dragoon, so keep that in mind. This is not once per turn, so this is one of the ways that you can keep looping it with Haggith, just keep generating advantage over and over again, and it is one of the best ways to access Full Vet out of the gate if you don't have ways into your incantations. Then finally we have Portal, which is the one of searchable card via Haggith, of course. This allows you to, when a Megalith monster is special summoned to your field, add a ritual monster from your grave back to your hand. So in tandem with Full as well as Pentaplume, you have quite a bit of recursion. It also bestows protection of your ritual monsters by battle once per turn. So kind of like a diagram in that respect, which is really, really nice actually, because as long as your monsters don't get threatened, you can preserve things like Full for as long as you can, or Oak, right? So that's one of the ways that you want to be able to ensure that you have your disruption live at the opportune moment. So next up we have the extra deck, which honestly is very, very flexible and you can play a wide variety of things. Largely this doesn't matter. If you have the space to accommodate, or the budgeting to accommodate Pot of Extravagance, and you probably want to play more of the important ones, being stuff like Entis or Herald or Gallant Granite, for example. But also cool things to note is stuff like the Nephthys Link, which is really, really cool because it's just a basic boss monster that can't be outed by a lot of things if you're in a simplified game state, so that's really nice. Also something noteworthy is Herald of Mirage Lights, because if your opponent uses Dogmatika Maximus, you can actually send this to the graveyard to add back resources, which is cool. Also Dingirsu is one of the only forms of non-targeting removal, so I would advise playing some form of that, either this or like Borreload or something. But yeah, it's very, very flexible. You can play a lot of what you choose to. And then finally for the side deck, we have 2 copies of Lava Golem, 3 copies of Gamma and the Driver for combo decks, and then we have 3 Denko, Pankratops, Gravity Dragon, as well as Reboot for backer decks. So going over Gravity Dragon real fast, when it's special summoned, you can bounce all your opponents backward to the hand and they can't respond to it. So it's really nice if you want to combo it with Denko to lock the back down, then bounce it back to their hand, and then tribute off the Denko for, just one of your level 4s, because it does happen to be level 4, which is nice. It's searchable via prep, so it's also really cool. And it is one of the best ways to blow out your opponent, is just part of your engine. Reboot is kind of questionable because sometimes you have a difficulty OTKing when you're not playing the fiber package, but it is still worth including if you are able to consistently pull off, Phalanx setups. And then finally we have 3 copies of Dogmatika Punishment, which is a cool going first card. You can side out some of your less impactful things, or if you want to side out like your non-engine slot, you can do that. And it allows you to either progress your game state or just pop multiple cards and act as like a secondary Bethor. So I really like it because it synergizes with the card like Extra Foolish, which you're already playing. So you naturally want cards that natively would want to be in the graveyard, right? So I feel like Punishment is a pretty solid option as just a generic trap. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get into the gameplay here. Okay, so match number 1 is up against Altergeist, and this is going to be a pretty good showcase of what the deck can do against a lot of non-engine disruption cards. And even if you get stopped, as long as you can get the ball rolling at some point and you don't die or get threatened, then you can use your engine to just snowball the game very, very quickly, even if you have dead cards like Nibiru. So going over the game here, our opponent is going to start off with a copy of Extravagance. They're going first, of course. And they don't pick up any Altergeist cards, but they do have 2 copies of Impermanence and a Strike set, as well as a Veiler in hand and Nibiru if we're not careful. So we do have to be mindful of all of these disruptions moving into our turn. And we do pick up a copy of Aeratron, which is decent enough in getting more access to setup, but the best and most reliable tool we have is Manju to try and get access to just a way to unlock this hand, right? Because this hand is not super great, so we'd ideally want to get something like a Chalice Lime so we can get access to our Incantations to get like Ophiel on field, stuff like that. But of course, our Manju is going to get disrupted here by the Imperm. And my plan here is to chain Aeratron so that on resolution, the Manju will be off the field as I'm going to attribute it for the Ophiel. And I'll get the search still that way. But my opponent actually makes a pretty heads up play and sees that I'm trying to do this. So when I go to chain the Aeratron, he just simply chains the second copy of Imperm, which denies the play that I'm trying to do. So what I end up doing instead is I tribute the Manju in my hand, which is a little bit questionable. The kind of logic behind this, I was still new to the deck, or like very, very new. I still would consider myself relatively new, but I was definitely like first timing it at this point. So my thought process was that, I can go for like a Granite play if I want to. But in hindsight, really, reserving the Manju for follow-up play, definitely very important. So probably shouldn't have missed out on that. Because the Ophiel ends up getting striked, and having that follow-up in hand would have been very nice here. So that's kind of something to note. You can kind of learn the deck alongside with me as I go through these games here. So we're going to hit for 14 and then end turn here. Our opponent draws another copy of Nibiru, which fortunately for us is fine because we're not really popping off at the moment. But we do draw a copy of Unformed, which actually does unlock the entire hand. So we can go ahead and use it and get rid of the Manju to summon a copy of Full from deck. And Full is going to grab us access to Ophiel back from grave. He's going to chain Veiler, but I decided to chain Full the quick effect to go ahead and ritual summon from deck. That way at least get some value out of it and try and make plays for this turn. So get rid of Nibiru, because I realize that's probably like a control back row deck at this moment, just given that it's Extravagance and there's Strike in the main deck. So I go ahead and get Hagath from deck, and Hagath is going to search another copy of Unformed, which I'm going to use to actually send the Phallic to grave to get Ophiel on field. So my entire goal at this point is to try and just set up for next turn, because I didn't really consider Align to try and preserve the Fey leg so I can try and go for game this turn. So all I was really trying to do here was just set up. And here I'm at 4 summons, so I was thinking that there might be a Nibiru as well lurking in the opponent's hand, which there actually was. So by having Portal here as well as Full, it ensures that I'm almost guaranteed to get access to Bethor, so I can just make a push next turn, plus use the Portal to add back the Fey leg if I need to go for game. He draws another copy of Strike. I'm going to use Full at the end of main phase, get access to Bethor, as well as the Portal to add back. I'm going to actually add back Ophiel here, because I'm going to be able to access rituals on my own turn, so I have another chance to use Portal to add back if I need to. Drawing Pentaplume is also decent here, but it's not really that needed at this point. I go ahead and just tribute off for Ophiel, and I add Aeratron and Phaleg back. Use Pentaplume here. Keep in mind this is summon number 2 and 3, if you're keeping track for Nibiru. But there is a way to just simply go for Phaleg. I could have also used... actually, no, I didn't have enough levels for Pentaplume. Or sorry, for Inception, because Pentaplume is a 3. So had to use it via Aeratron. But this is going to be enough damage for game here. So game 2, our opponent's going to be going first again, but you can see he actually has Geist cards this time. So we're going to have to contend with the engine as well as the non-disruption or non-engine forms of disruption. So he's going to go for Extravagance again and pick up a Melisleek and a Ghost Ogre in addition to his opening hand. So he's going to get the Melisleek, search for Faker, of course, and set Imperm. So there's Imperm, Ash, Ogre, as well as the multi-Faker to grab Silk. So that's 4 disruptions, and that's quite a lot, right? But our hand is actually very, very nice here. Sometimes opening portal does suck because it is very, very easily accessible, but other times it's nice just to be able to actually combo with the Megaliths that require themselves to discard, because that way you just get value when you just add back for whatever you tribute, right? So we're gonna start off with a prep to search for a copy of Ophiel. You could make the argument that I should have searched a copy of Chalice Slime so I could go for the incantation setup. I really did undervalue how powerful Chalice Slime was in this deck when I was first starting, and I was really focused on just the Megalith monsters themselves. But Chalice Slime really does help. Plus, I was convinced that this Unformed would just get me there, but that gets hit with Ash, as you see. So with that, it actually makes this setup a lot trickier, because now my only mechanism of ritual summoning is this Bethor here, and that has to get there. Of course, we have Talismandra to try and get the candle. That way, I didn't really need the Chalice Slime to begin with. But that is going to get met with the copy of Imperm. So once I get Impermed, he's going to summon out Faker, of course, and get Silk. So I know that there's at least another disruption coming my way. And now, really, the only actual avenue of ritual summoning is this Bethor. I have no other ways to try and finagle my way out of this. So we're going to activate Portal, and then we're going to use Bethor. And then, luckily, we get access to Ophiel on the field. Now we get Ghost Ogre here on the portal, which doesn't hurt that badly, but it also kind of isn't the greatest thing, because we only play one of it and there's no real way to get it back, so it's going to hurt our grind game quite significantly against the back row deck that excels at grinding, right? So it definitely will hurt in the long term. We get access to a full via the Ophiel, and then Ophiel is going to be met with the Silk. So somebody can comment on this. I'm not sure if this is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro bug or Edo Pro bug, but Ophiel specifies that you have to tribute monsters from your hand or field, including this card on your field, in order to successfully perform your ritual summon. So when it goes to Silk Bounce, I thought, okay, that just means it doesn't resolve because it's not on my field anymore. It says this card on your field. But for some reason, Edo Pro allowed me to distribute it from my hand. So I feel like that's a bug, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong there, but I feel like that definitely should not have worked that way. Definitely let me know. But regardless, we're going to continue as if that was a legal play. I really don't think it should have been. But full going to add back the Bethor. Honestly, my turn would have ended right there if that was the case. But we're going to full summon using the the Talismandra to get Haggith from deck. And the Haggith can search a copy of Unformed. Here we go to battle phase, and we just beat over the Linkuriboh, or just force it. And then go set the Unformed and pass. So we actually got access to a lot more than we probably should have, given the fact that this full hit the board. Here, summons a copy of Marionetter, and then I'm going to chain the full, but he actually hits it with Ash, which denies one of my ways to access Bethor. Now, it's not the end of the world, because I do have another copy of Unformed, and this is a level 8 because I added back Bethor. So I have actually 16 stars worth to go into another Bethor if I need to. Here he goes to the... he tries to go for the end phase. Wait. I'm trying to remember what happened here, actually. Oh, that's right. So what I try and do here, I believe, is go for a pop before he gets a chance to use a Marionetter to bring back the copy of Melisik. That's why I use Bethor here. And I decided to pop the entire board. I changed Silk with us just to get the Bethor off. And then Silk add back the protocol, but unfortunately Imperm is now live because he has no cards, so he's going to be able to Imperm Faker, which is very unfortunate. Yeah, so the thought process was just to try and deny Melisik from ever hitting the board so it doesn't get value, but got a little bit punished there, and that is unfortunately going to be the end of the game, because now he just goes for a smart play and getting Marionetter from deck, so he does that play anyway with Melisik. And then he goes into Hexia, gets another Faker, and has Protocol set, so it's going to be very, very hard to win from this position. He shotguns the Protocol to be able to get access to both Faker and Silk. And basically, whatever I do here is going to not resolve. He lets the Ritual Summon go through, and then he just negates the Ophiel, and I pretty much lose from there. Alright, so for game number 3 here, we have a fairly good hand for going first, but our opponent is actually on a multitude of hand traps, so we're going to have to contend with that. And he has fairly good access to his starters as well, with Marionetter plus Faker. So we're going to start off with a copy of Pentaplume. It's pretty nice that we don't have to go for Candle, and we can just go straight for Talismandra because we open the Inception. That way we get a little bit further into your engine. However, my opponent decides to actually gamble the Talismandra, which is pretty heads up, because not only does it deny the search, but it gets the body off the board, which means that the only incantation now that I have left for this Inception is a level 3, and the only monster I can really use with this, or to summon with this now, is the Megalith full. So it cuts off my access to level 4s here. Luckily I do have the Unformed, so that largely didn't end up mattering, at least for that particular case. We're gonna get Ophiel, and he's gonna Ogre it. He could have Ogred like on the Ritual Summon effect, but I guess he was like, well, the interaction with Silk was really weird, so I'm not gonna take any chances here. I don't know how Edo Pro is coded, but I definitely don't think that should have worked that last game, but I digress. Gonna move on from that. We get Folder hand off the resolution of Ophiel, and then we can use Inception to go ahead and grab our full onto the field by summoning or tributing off the Pentaplume, which I did allude to before. It was the only way I could actually make use of the Inception this turn. Full will add back the Ophiel, and then we can tribute the Ophiel to summon another Ophiel, which again does not want to return to search, so we can get access to Haggith, summon out the Haggith, and then get access to Portal. That way we can go ahead and use Extra Foolish to grab a Herald Search. This way we can go for Portal, and then tribute to get another, or extra additional value on the field. It's kind of a lot of hoops and hurdles to accomplish something that doesn't seem that threatening, but luckily we do have full access. Yeah, we have full access, and we could technically summon out this Phaleg. It sucks that that's the one that we had to add back with the Portal here, because we started off with it. It would be nice if this was like a Bethor, that way we have multiple ways to access it if this full gets stopped. But not the end of the world here, we can pass and be fairly safe. Now he does rip an Ash, which is going to hurt because it's going to actually stop our full play. He's going to Marionette her for a copy of Protocol, and then attempt to leave the main phase, and I try and use the full, but that does get Ash, so no Bethor for this turn. So that is going to make it so that his Protocol and his Faker are both going to be live, so I have to be now very conscious of that. I don't know about the Faker at this point, of course. We're going to pick up a copy of Punishment for turn, which is a little bit late, but not too bad at this point. It's a grinding matchup anyways. We're going to use Ophiel to try and Ritual Summon, and he's going to use Protocol. Here I use the full just so I can tribute off the Ophiel, so I can make use of its stars while it's still on the board. That way I can get access to a Haggith. And now there is one other interruption. We're going to use Haggith and Portal in sequence, and he's going to trigger the Faker to summon the Silk from deck. We get Ophiel back to our hand as well as Unformed to hand. So we get access to a multitude of plays here, because at this point it's hard for a single copy of Silk to actually get all the way there. He's going to go ahead and bounce the Haggith again, and again, it allows me to use it even though it's not on my field anymore. So I really don't know what happened there. Honestly, I really have no idea. I honestly think it's a bug or a glitch of some sort. I said gug, like trying to combine glitch and bug. But we're going to use Aeratron to Ritual Summon the Bethor by getting rid of the Phaleg here. We picked up the Bethor off the Ophiel, I do believe. But now we can just pop the entire board, and it is pretty good here. I miss Lethal. There's probably a way to do it, but at the moment I just didn't really consider it. Probably could have Unformed for a full to try and add back the Phaleg, but I don't think I had a way to get the Phaleg out. That's kind of what I was thinking probably. I played these games a couple of days ago, so I'm not 100% sure of what my thought process was, but I do believe that there probably was a way to make a game. If you guys can let me know in the comments. But we're going to go ahead and full away the Bethor for another Bethor at the end of the main phase here. And that is going to indeed spell at the end of the game here, because we can add back the Phaleg, and our opponent concedes. Okay, so match number 2 is going to be up against Buster Blader, the Dogmatika Red Eyes variant that is very popular, of course. And you guys actually did want to see some of the second action, so I will be giving it to you via proxy here. My opponent's playing it, not me. But this is going to kind of showcase some of the weaknesses of the deck, and the deck has a really hard time playing against Buster Blader, like very hard against the Buster Lock. So we are going first, which is nice. Our opponent has 3 hand traps. We're going to try and access our Candle, but our opponent is smartly going to Valor it. And we're going to chain Aeratron in response, similar to what we tried to do in the last Geist series in Game 1, to just dodge the removal here. So go ahead and get full to our field, that way our Candle actually does resolve and gets access to Inception. Now it's tricky because we'll be able to use the Inception in our hand, but we won't have another incantation name to use Inception's Grave Effect, which is what really makes the card broken. But nonetheless, we do have access to full now, which is good because we can add back the Aeratron that we just pitched and then use its effect, but that does get ashed. So we are left on very little here, but we're not too upset about it because we have enough levels to actually make a Bethor play. Plus we have Nibiru, so I'm doing pretty decent here. Unfortunately, opponent does have a copy of Red Eye's Insight, which gets access to a copy of Fusion, and there's no way for me to actually meaningfully interact here with this Red Eye's Fusion play, so it kind of just resolves, right? And here, it's very hard to actually out this card, you know, when you don't have the means to be able to do it immediately. I'm going to chain full to the Dragoon to pop, and he's going to negate it with Dragoon. So he's just going to pop the Talismandra, and he's going to use Nadir's Servant, get Ecclesia to hand, tap for 4k, and then use the Tentaclad at end phase to add a copy of Fluid Release to hand. So even though it's just Dragoon pass, it's pretty hard actually to deal with this. Like, not only getting past the negation, but actually clearing it. It's quite difficult. And now our Inception is dead, so we have to use the Aeratron to get this Nibiru out of hand to summon a copy of Full. Full will add back this Aeratron. He's going to negate it when it goes to use the main deck effect. Or the summon from main deck, rather, effect. And that's just going to be the end of the game. We really cannot do anything else from this position. Alright, so for game number 2 here, we are going first again. And luckily our opponent doesn't draw hand traps this time around, but has a lot of engine cards that are all very high impact. Like Servant, Buster Whelp, and Red Eye's Fusion are like all the really powerful cards in the deck. And Hard Drawn Prologue is also really good and very threatening. Luckily, we are able to kind of set up the way we want to. So we have access to Manju, we can grab a copy of Chalice Slime here. Chalice Slime can go ahead and grab a copy of Candle from deck, so we can add a copy of Inception to hand. And from here, we can Inception away the Candle to grab Haggith, and Haggith can search for Portal. From this position, we can use Portal, and we can also use Unformed to get Full from deck, so we're already a step ahead of where we need to be. We don't actually have to rely on this necessarily, but it gets us an extra step into our combo earlier, which is nice. Full can add back the Haggith as well as Portal, which can add back the other Haggith, so we get double Haggith back to hand. And we also have Inception engraved, so we can get rid of the Chalice Slime to go ahead and summon the Talismandra from deck. And that can search a copy of the Chaos Max to hand, so we have that set up. Then the next goal is to just try and set up a Bethor play. So we can go and use the Inception to tribute away the Talismandra for Haggith. Haggith can search a copy of the Unformed, and then we can use the Full to get Ophiel from deck, and then Ophiel search Oak, and then we can use the on-field effect of Ophiel to get Oak onto the field. The reason why we did it this way instead of just summoning Oak directly was it's another name for Bethor, to be able to get an extra pop on the field, so could come up. And we already played hard to Nibiru, so, you know, not really a whole lot that can be said or done there. We're going to set 2 and pass. So we have Punishment, we have Chaos Max, and we have the access to the Bethor, so I'm feeling relatively good. And opponent draws Nibiru for turn, which is pretty unfortunate for them. But again, Red Eye's Fusion, man, it's really hard to interact with this card in this deck. So like, if they just summon out Dragoon, like, there's not really anything you can say or do about it, because they have priority in their main phase. So if it's the first card that they activate, then yeah, Chaos Max is not really going to do a whole lot. Plus, it doesn't really interact that well anyways. Just given the fact that, you know, your opponent is, like, if they just took a Dragoon, you still can't target it, so you can't really pop with Bethor. Granted, here I would have been able to possibly, if you start off with, like, Insight, for example, then I could have, like, used the Chaos Max and, like, treated something else. And then use the other effect of Unformed to actually lower the Dragoon if he tries to attack into the Chaos Max or something. So that would have been cool. But he's going to use the Dragoon to pop, and then in sequence he's going to use Oak as well as the Full. And he's going to negate the Full. And then I'm going to choose to chain Unformed just to get the body off the board so I get value out of it. Kind of like what I did earlier, just to get value off the levels being there. Here I go ahead and summon the Chaos Max, but the Dragoon hasn't resolved yet, so it's just going to pop the Chaos Max so it doesn't get the opportunity to activate its effect, which definitely does suck. Not that it would have mattered that much anyway, because Dragoon being on board already is just enough. Full is going to go ahead and add back as well as Portal, but it's really going to be tough to win from this position. He gets rid of our Full, and he's going to use Nadir's Servant to go ahead and send Entis. And Entis is going to pop the Portal, so like, there goes our grind game. And then he attacks over the Haggith. So just cleared our entire board, and our punishment literally could not do anything, which is pretty unfortunate there. I'm going to go ahead and set a copy of Trap Trick and Prologue at end phase. And yeah, once this is set up, I didn't even know that he had the Buster Blader stuff live and ready to go, but now it's just totally dead. And by chaining it to the Chalice Slime effect, it made it so that now this Pencil Plume is unable to activate just because it's going to be in a new chain. Or not, sorry, not the Chalice Slime effect, but the Inception effect. Here I'm going to try and Punishment. He's going to Dragoon negate, and that is definitely going to be the end of the game here. So the last match did a pretty good job, I think, of showcasing some of the weaknesses of Megalith. If our opponent's playing a deck like Buster Blader with, Dragoon Turbo, basically, that ignores a lot of what we're trying to set up, then our setup doesn't really mean anything, right? Like, it completely bypasses the Chaos Max, it completely ignores Bethor, and unless we have specific non-engine cards, then we're not able to actually play against the Buster Lock very well. So you can see that some strategies just natively can be ours by virtue of the way our deck operates, unless if we play very specific other supplementary engines. So that's kind of why, you have to keep in mind the alternatives that do exist in the form of like Hellcross combos. But as far as pure Megalith is concerned, that's what we're still trying to showcase off. So onwards to match number 3 against Infernoble. This is actually relatively favored as long as we don't get full comboed, because we are able to actually set up quite nicely against what they're trying to do. This is one of the decks where our game plan lines up very nicely against theirs, provided we get the setup, of course. We're going to prep for the Chalice Slime so we can get rid of the Aeratron to send or summon a copy of Candle. That's going to be met with the copy of Imperm to negate it, but we have Unformed to dodge it. So it's nice that there's a lot of ways to actually just dodge things like this. And it's not like Candle is necessarily a must resolve when you open Unformed, but in certain situations you just want to have the Inception because that card is just very, very powerful. Going to go ahead and use Full to add back the Aeratron that we pitched, and then we're going to use the Inception to get Hageth on the field. Hageth can search a copy of Portal, and then we can also use a copy of Full on the field to get rid of the Hageth to search, or rather summon a copy of Ophiel from deck. Ophiel and Portal both trigger to add back the Chalice Slime. This is really cool because by adding back the Chalice Slime and the Auk off the Ophiel, we can now pitch the Chalice Slime with the Inception engrave. This way we get access to the play that we normally would have done if the Candle was not forced to leave the field early. So this is basically just a way to kind of recover and mitigate that game state. Talismanager can search a copy of course, the Chaos Max, and then we can go ahead and Inception away the Talismanager for the copy of Oak, and then pass turn from here. So, like the previous turn, basically, or the previous game against Buster Blader, we have Oak to be able to search, set up rather, a copy of Chaos Max, and then we have Full to go ahead and grab Bethor if we need to. Our opponent's going to draw for turn a copy of Renaud. They have quite a lot of combo pieces, but not enough to really push past what we're doing, especially with what we're doing consists of denying them of any monster effects. We can go ahead and use the Chaos Max, and then they're going to use the Rendell. That's going to add a copy of Red Layer to hand. Red Layer is going to summon as well as the Renaud, and they're going to go for Fiber and normal summon Oliver and then try and pass. This is, I presume, to try and just go for a Fiber play. I'm not really sure what they're going for because it'd be 2 tuners. But regardless, at the end of main phase, we're just going to go ahead and Bethor pop the whole board. And we're going to also full add back, and they're just going to concede before we even get a chance to show what we're going to try and do. Alright, so game number 2 here, and of course our opponent is going to be going first, which is pretty scary. We did open the Nibiru, which is nice, but our opponent actually has a pretty decently strong hand to actually play around it, if they open well enough and draw well enough. So they're going to go ahead and use Heritage to add a copy of Oliver to hand. They have summon Red Layer and Oliver, and then go into Isolde. Isolde's going to add a copy of Red Layer on summon. Then they're going to use Oliver to play around Valor Imperm, I assume. And then use or send 2 to go ahead and summon the Striker, go for Link Cross, and then summon a couple of tokens here. They're going to go for, of course, the Marcher play, Marcher bring back, and then here, of course, got a Nibiru in case they just go straight into Herald. Because still Fiber Axis is pretty powerful. They're going to Talents to draw here, and they actually pick up enough to keep going here. They pick up Durendal, which is good enough by itself. Durendal is going to go ahead and add a copy of Oliver to hand. They're going to use the Phoenix Blade to add it back and then pitch it to summon back the Oliver and go into Fiber this way. And from here, it's basically the end of the game. They basically just go for full combo. You're going to summon Despot 1. They're going to go ahead and grab 3 tokens here. They're going to summon Despot 1 back. They're going to go for the Power Tool. They're going to Power Tool for triple DDR and then add 1 to hand. They're going to Phoenix Blade, add itself back, and then they're going to actually summon a copy of Colt Wing from deck. Colt Wing's going to summon out more tokens, and they're going to bring back the Despot 1. They also get access to Herald here, and then go for DDR to pitch, and then bring back the TG Striker. Gonna go for Roland effect, and then they go for Charles, and then end phase, go ahead and resolve Roland as well as Charles. And then you're gonna go ahead and use Smoke Grenade to rip our best play starter, being Manju, out of our hand. So, very bad position for us, and they have full hand knowledge, so they can negate the right card with Herald. We're gonna try and force battle phase, but they're gonna end up main phase use Roland to equip, and then they're going to pop our Nibiru here. And then here, the only real thing we can do is Preparation of Rites, because we have to reveal a monster with Pentaplume. And they now know that this is a card we drew for turn, so of course they're going to negate it, because they know the rest of our hand does nothing, and we lose here. Alright, so game 3 here, we opened very well, but our opponent did open Droll, and Droll, as you probably have noticed, is one of the best cards you can side against this deck if you happen to be playing it, because this deck does searches upon searches upon searches, and there is really no way to play around it, honestly. So what we do is we're going to start off with Pentaplume to grab a copy of Candle from deck, and we're going to Candle search for Inception, and then we get smacked by Droll. Very unfortunate. All we can really do is just hope to try and set up, so we're going to Unformed away the Ophiel to summon a Full from deck, and then we're going to Full back the Ophiel to hand, and then we're going to go ahead and set up a copy of Oak just as another possible method of interruption if we need it. We're going to set up Punishment, hope that it gets there. Our opponent's hand is pretty good. It has enough starters. They're going to go ahead and start up with a copy of Heritage. They're going to use a copy of Durendal, and then Durendal effect is going to search a copy of Ogier to hand. They're going to normal the Ogier, and then they're going to send Gearfried, and here I know that the Renaud's coming. Renaud's going to go ahead and add back the Gearfried. At this point, I'm going to decide to go for Bether right away. That way, like, they're not going to be able to insulate their plays with Gearfried and have the bodies on board. They're going to use Gearfried, of course, by banishing the Durendal that they searched earlier, and they're going to use Living Fossil to go ahead and bring back the Ogier. Here I decided to use Punishment, and I decided to use pop the Gearfried with Entus. And from here, they can't really do a whole lot. They can bring back Ogier and attack over Pentaplume, but we're actually won from this position, so you can see Punishment having nice value just as a generic trap card. In a deck that already wants to play cards that are, again, just get value in the graveyard that are sent from the extra deck. So just go for a full place here. You can kind of just see the basic shenanigans that we're trying to pull off. And eventually just go for a Phalanx setup. We don't have to fear Nibiru or anything, so we kind of juggle around for a little bit more than we have to. But eventually we do find our way back into a copy of Phalanx, so we can just switch our monsters to attack and go for game. Alright, so I had a little bit of extra time, so I decided to actually play with the deck a bit more since I'm generally just less familiar with it. And I'm playing a fourth matchup here against Dinos, which is another very high tier deck. And if you guys are enjoying this video, be sure to drop a like. It really would help me out, and I would very much appreciate it. But carrying on here, we are going first, of course, and this is going to showcase, again, some of the weaknesses of Megalith, because there are some decks, again, this is another example where they sometimes just don't really care about what we do, unless if we specifically have Chaos Max and Nova way to answer it. So we're going to start off with a copy of Preparation of Rites to grab Chalice Line in hand. We're going to Chalice Line pitch a copy of Ophiel to grab Candle from deck. Candle is going to try and add a copy of Inception, but that's going to be met with Imperm. But luckily we drew a copy of Aeratron again, so we can dodge the Imperm. Really gotta love this play. We're going to get Ophiel to board as well as the Inception to our hand. We're going to use the Ophiel effect to add a copy of Hagith, and then use the Inception to get rid of the Chalice Line to summon the Hagith. Hagith to search a copy of Unformed, which will get us access to a copy of Full from deck. And then from here, Full can add us back the copy of Chalice Slime. You also gotta love this play. That way we can use the Inception and Grave to send it back to the grave, get Talismandra, and then Talismandra can search a copy of Chaos Max. From here, we can use the Full to get rid of the Ophiel to summon a copy of Oak from deck, and we can basically just pass from here, because we don't really need to do a whole lot. We decided to use Oak. We draw a second copy of Bethor, which kind of sucks, but not the end of the world. We can use this Inception if we need to next turn, if this somehow survives. And we are off to the races. So we can pass here, knowing that we can Oak for a Chaos Max as well as Full into a Bethor, even if it requires a little bit of a crusty setup. Our opponent draws Forbidden Droplet for turn, which definitely sucks, because that ends up turning off our entire board. So they have priority in main phase. They're going to activate Fossil Dig, and we're going to Oak in response. And sniffing out the Chaos Max, because they saw us search it, we're going to go ahead and use the Forbidden Droplet and send a monster and the Fossil Dig from field, and negate our whole board of meaningful interaction. And now that they have a copy of Baby in hand, they basically just won the game. They can go ahead and use Miscellaneous Hand Effect and then the Grave Effect to summon a copy of Archosaur. That's going to pop the Baby in hand to add a copy of Pill. Baby's going to summon the Overraptor from deck, and that's going to search a copy of Baby to their hand, which they will then normal summon to search, or to go ahead and pop with the Overraptor to get a Baby from grave. Then they're going to Baby, summon the Miscellaneousaurus, go into Linkuriboh as well as the Secure Gardener. Then they're going to Pill for the UCT, and if that weren't enough, they have a second UCT at the ready. They're going to pop the Baby to grab another copy of Idolka and flip our entire board face down and summon another Conductor Tyranno. Yeah, let's go to game 2. Alright, here we are in game number 2 here, and we're going to decide to go first, despite that embarrassing showing in game number 1. It's a bit risky to make Dino go first and go for a Dolka plus Pankratops play, honestly, because that is very hard for a deck to beat. So we're just going to hope that they don't sack Droplet again and try our best. So we're going to go ahead and start off with Preparation of Rites again. We already have Talslime, so we can go for Ophiel. We're a couple of steps ahead of where we need to be because we have like a lot of our combo pieces in hand. We can Talslime, get rid of the Chaos Max because we can get a back lady with full. Then we can use Candle to add Inception to hand, and then sack it off with Inception for Ophiel. Ophiel can add a copy of Oak to hand, and we can use Inception's Graveyard effect to get Talis Manager from the deck. Talis Manager can add another copy of Ophiel, because we can, again, just get the Chaos Max back later. We can summon Haggoth here with the Inception and add Unformed to hand. Use Unformed to grab a copy of Full from deck, and then Full can add back the Chaos Max. Then we can use Full to summon a copy of Haggoth from deck. That way we can get Portal to our hand, very nice to have this as early as possible. Haggoth can summon the Oak from the hand, and then we can have some recovery with the Portal, and then we can pass without having to use our extra Foolish Burial, which is really nice as it can be a removal spell going second. So I'm feeling pretty good. We have Chaos Max, we have the Oak to be able to summon it, we have Full to get Bethor. Hopefully they don't have another Droplet, and thankfully they don't. They have Extravagance here. We can go ahead and chain the Oak and hope they just don't draw another copy of Droplet off of this. Thankfully they don't, and they have triple Lost World as a matter of fact. We can go ahead and resolve a Chaos Max fully. And from here, they have double Fossil Dig. They have just a lot of dinos right now. They can use Lost World as well as the Overraptor, but I don't really feel threatened, because even if they can protect with Lost World, they can't activate the baby that they destroy, and they try and do that, realize they can't, and then scoop. Alright, so now we're in game number 3, and our opponent has opted for us to go first again. Not super surprising, it is Dino, and they can very much beat our setup if they draw the right cards, and as you can see, they drew the right card, so it's probably going to be the end of the game for us, honestly. We can't really set up a whole lot than what we normally do, and even though we can play past this Imperm on this Candle here, it's not really going to be a whole lot. We have Portal Access, which is also cool, but we don't really have the availability to do, you know, any more than what Droplet would beat, honestly. Like, Droplet would beat whatever setup we have, which is very frustrating. But again, that's just kind of how it is. If this card becomes more popular, then this deck definitely becomes a lot worse if this is all that you're able to accomplish. Now, again, if you're able to go for 5 replays and go for more, then that's a different story. But sadly, this is not the story that we are currently living in. We're going to go ahead and use the Oak, and then they have Droplet again, and they can turn off their whole board. And that is very unfortunate. They have Misk and Petite Pteranodon again. They will end up missing Lethal here, but it's not really going to matter too much. Archosaur is going to go ahead and pop the Petite Pteranodon. They're also going to trigger the Lost World to give us a token. We're going to add Pill to hand, and then Petite will summon Overraptor from deck. Ovi will add a copy of Baby to hand, which they can then normal summon to pop with the Overraptor second effect to bring back the Petite Pteranodon. They can use Baby to summon a copy of Miscellaneous from deck, then go into Link Reboot and Secure Garda, and go into Double Evolution Pill to go ahead and grab Conductor Tyranno. Flip our entire board face down, popping the Petite in the process to grab Pankratops. Now they actually forget that both the Pankratops and the Petite cannot attack because they were summoned off of Petite's in effect, right? So they actually do miss game here, where they do end up, you know, attacking with Secure Garda to protect the token and all that good stuff. But this is actually slightly under game. So if we can somehow survive UCT plus Pankratops plus Dolka, we can maybe win, but that's probably not happening, right? We do draw an extra Foolish, but it's just not going to be enough here. We know what's coming. Even if we send like Entis, they have Dolka, you know, Manju, Dolka, and then Portal, Pankratops, UCT, flip a board face down. It's just not happening with this hand, unfortunately. So let's just go ahead and get back into the deck here. Alright, so closing thoughts is that this is actually really fun to play, but it's a very high skill floor. It's pretty hard to actually pilot correctly. I definitely don't think I did it optimally by any stretch. And it does have some hard matchups that just simply don't play very well into what Megalith tries to do, as long as you're going for just, you know, Chaos Max plus Bethor setups. If you can go with more with Halka lines off of Researcher Gallant stuff, then you can definitely do a lot more with the deck, but I'm trying to showcase a very bare bones Megalith-centric list. As far as that's concerned, unfortunately, you can't really do a whole ton beyond a certain point, which is a big weakness, but the deck still has amazing recursion in terms of Full and Portal and Pensaplume. It has like 15 starters because you have, you know, Manju, you have Talslime, you have Prep, you have Extra Foolish, you have Unformed. You have 15 like one card very solid plays and then a lot of very good extenders. You have very strong monsters if they do resolve and your opponent does care about what you're doing. And overall, it's a very nice deck to play on a budget, and I would highly recommend learning this deck if you wanted to play something on the cheap that's actually very, very good against a lot of the meta decks right now. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like as well as any thoughts or feedback in the comment section down below. Feel free to subscribe for more informative and competitive Yu-Gi-Oh content. If you want to, you can follow me on Discord, Twitter, or Twitch. All the links in the description as always. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. See you guys!